Welcome to DMs Discuss. I'm Mike.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Scott.
Welcome to DMs Discuss, where this week DMs will discuss just things that we liked while DMing. This is going to be the first in a series of episodes that we are calling Dungeon Master Moments, or DMMs. And it's just going to be us sitting around, drinks required, talking about some of our favorite D&D moments. And hopefully it's something that you guys enjoy. And hopefully in the future we'll have some of our friends and some people that we come across through socials that have some moments they want to share as well.
Yeah, and I have some a player I play with on Sunday who also DMs. I've talked to him about maybe coming on a podcast and joining one of these episodes. I don't know if you guys know him. You might have met him through Toronto D&D and stuff. His name is Lynn. And yeah, he plays in our Sunday game, and he DMs as well.
Whoa, like Manuel Miranda?
No, no. Not just Lynn.
Oh man,
you didn't know Scott's in the Adventure Zone on Sundays?
I was gonna say he's on a lot of podcasts, maybe.
Yeah, could be. Anyways, I don't mean to be like that guy, but what's everybody drinking?
I have a maple old fashioned. It's one of my kind of go-tos.
I've never had an old fashioned.
It's good.
They're really good.
Is it just like whiskey and like orange peels?
It's whiskey, bitters, and some sort of sweetener. You can use simple syrup. You can use a sugar cube. I like maple syrup because I'm Canadian, so fuck it.
Sounds good. I'm drinking pomegranate and grapefruit sour. It's from Collective Arts. We are not being paid to pitch them. But
as far as sponsorship go, I would take one from Collective Arts.
Oh, I would too.
They make some fantastic sours. They're really, really good.
Their shit's
also, I
so
want some of their
expensive
merch.
Here. Yeah, their merch is fantastic.
Also
but
expensive
I haven't
here.
mentioned this before. Since I moved, no, dude, it's like $5 a can for Collective Arts in New Brunswick. It's insane.
Do they have the Collective Arts gin there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
they do.
Their bottle designs and their art is just really cool, and they source them from like local artists and things like that, or like they just have like open,
I know. I sold a photo to Collective Arts.
Oh, did you? Sweet.
Yeah, it was on one of their summer IPAs like 2 years ago.
Nice. That's dope.
Yeah.
Alrighty, well, if Collective Arts wants to buy some more photos or a little ad spot, feel free to reach out to us. Actually, no, one of our friends actually kind of like works at that new location they opened up in downtown Toronto. So
there you go.
I'll see if they want to sponsor some D&D podcasts. But anyways, yeah, let's jump into this. I guess today we're discussing those DM moments, those moments either as a player or as a DM where you're just like, as a player appreciating something a DM did, or as a DM appreciating something a player did.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think we came up with who wants to go first. So who wants to go first?
I'll go. I've got mine pretty well in mind.
Do it.
All right. So this is one of my favorite moments of DM because I knew I'd fully immersed / broken my player's will. So a little background on it is that I run a homebrew campaign centered around a guild system, where within like the story narrative of the campaign, there's also like a little side meta narrative of the players gaining promotions, which is, they can get ahead of each other, attain certain positions, and there's limited amounts of them for the higher level positions in certain cities. So this being like a fun little thing, eventually we got to the point where someone could become a commander or the leader of a full guild hall on their own. And one of my players, Matt, who you guys have played with, he decided that instead of taking over an existing guild hall, he would raise funds and open a new one in a city that didn't have one.
That's
and
very
he chose, he happened to choose the biggest city that's in my world. It's called Crystal Shear, but also that city is known for being incredibly bureaucratic.
So much paperwork. I don't know why you would do that.
Annoying. Incredibly annoying.
It's a fun, engaging gameplay mechanic. And so normally people go there, they have to fill out like customs forms just to enter the city and like declare themselves. There's 3 layers of it they have to get like additional forms for.
So one thing that's really helpful, and I know when we did like the 2nd generation Blackstrike like game, is we had a warforged who one of his tools was like a little pen, and he just enjoyed filling out forms in triplicate, so that saved us a lot of time.
Yeah,
So
never had to
if you're
sleep, so
yeah, if you're ever in Crystal Shear, just bring along a paper filling or a form filling robot.
yeah. Ask for Soccerbot.
Yeah, it is very useful. And also, so about the player himself, he worked for an insurance company and fills out a lot of forms. So when he became commander, normally there's a quest associated with it that gives you essentially control of it. So his quest was simply navigating this.
Let's clarify that. The player in real life works for an insurance company and fills
Yes.
out forms as a career,
Yeah,
as a
his character
job.
is not the most boring D&D character of all time.
Yeah, also the player did that. The character was classic, just a hit stuff hard fighter. And so yeah, that was his quest. Was he had to figure out how to establish this guild hall, and I crafted the most nightmarish labyrinth of bureaucracy that involved multiple departments. And from what I recall, he first had to get a foreign real estate buyer's permit. He had to get a provisionary mercenary license. There was like zoning things. He had to like get an immigration form so he could actually live in the city. They had to just talk their way into the neighborhood they wanted to look at the real estate, and it was just full of a maze of forms. It was like the P99F. There would be like the F22. Things had to be stamped by one department and then submitted in triplicate to like another one. And so I created several fictitious government bureaus that all had different forms of similar sounding names. If they miss certain steps and miss closing deadlines to file them, they have to restart things. And this is where it gets down to my favorite moment, is that they had finally gotten all their paperwork after a few false starts. They had everything, and they're getting ready to complete their exam to get their provisional mercenaries license, which would be an actual quest where they actually just hit something with weapons for once. And before they left, they're double checking they had got everything in order, every single form, because everything would close when they left, and if they didn't do it right, they'd have to start over. And so my friend Matt, he's going over them. Is okay, like I-35J, like the T-22, this sort of stuff. And I had just like this like gnome clerk just like droning on about all this stuff. And another character in the game interrupts as he's going through his like list of forms. I was like, wait, should we get their insurance? Like, is that a good thing for the quest? And Matt, out of character, genuinely turned and snapped at him, and he said, "We don't need their insurance. We already have our own." And at that moment, everyone just went quiet, and just everyone just burst out laughing a few seconds later with the realization of how ridiculous it was that they had been spending 2 hours filling out fantasy paperwork to the point where they're actually like invested in it.
Did you actually have them fill out physical forms?
It was not physical forms. The problem was simply
Okay.
remembering the names of them and remembering where they had
I
to
see.
go. Because there's like
That's
very
fair.
similar like sounding departments and stuff like that. So it's more like they had to listen to essentially, really like boring bureaucratic speeches that would eventually describe what they had to do.
Did
So
you
it's like,
ever once in this quote, I'm gonna call this an encounter. Did you ever once in this encounter roll for paperwork loss? Just a misplaced form somewhere.
I didn't. They did have to roll some negotiation to like secure uh, a loan from the guild itself for the purchase of the real estate and like how much they could talk the land down for.
I find it funny that this man like, oh, you're fighting a lich and you're fighting this and this is CR13 and and there's like, oh yeah, this encounter in Crystal Shear with all this bureaucracy, yeah, this is like CR37. Like,
It's great too because they eventually did a combat encounter to prove they could get their mercenaries license, and it was just like a few orcs, and it was incredibly below what they could do. But it's just like getting like a learner's driver's permit. It's just like, let's make sure you meet all the basic requirements. Please go kill these 5 orcs. It's like, we've killed a dragon.
that's pretty
That's
funny.
awesome.
Yeah, I mean, something like that is like, it might be fun to like weave quests like that into games, but it's just like, it's just an adult task that nobody fucking likes doing. But they need this particular item and they have to go through like 5 stores to find
Yeah,
it.
it's the kind of thing that you like play D&D to avoid having to do.
Yeah, I think you gotta be sparing with that, but I think it's funny just to throw that at your players once in a while, just like some mundane, like, oh, today you're doing like your all your like clothing can't be found and stuff, and they just have to go like do laundry and fold it or
Yeah,
whatever.
100%. Like, I think that's actually a really good segue into one of my favorite moments thus far.
Do it.
Which was actually in that same game that Chris DMs. As a player, one of my favorite DM moments was watching our whole party scramble to try to figure out the puzzle that Chris had given us. So we had finally gotten to where we assumed the big bad of this kind of area of the cult was, and we got in, and the door slammed shut behind us and was we couldn't see any way to open it. Nothing could happen, and then a digital screen flashed on that just showed 20:00, and then it started counting down like 1959, 1958, 1957, and we were like, oh my god, it's a timer. And there were like titanium doors around us, and we used pigments to look through the doors and saw like these giant fucking death robots through the doors, and there were like weird scrawlings of different types of language and text all over the place, and books and magical items like all over the fucking place. We were trying to figure out the puzzle, try to get through the door at the far end of the room.
I would like to point out this is an actual timer. I pulled out like my phone with a 20-minute timer and set it down in front of them.
That was the best thing. Pulls out his phone, sets a 20-minute timer, is like 20 minutes real life time. Gotta solve this, go. And we like lost our shit, and it just escalated and escalated and escalated as the time wound down. And then finally it was just like 3, 2, 1, and you just hear Chris go like, thank you. Your place in line has like come up. Your time waiting is done. Proceed to chat with this guy. And then the door just fucking opened. It was literally a waiting room. And we spent 20 minutes of real life time scrambling to try to figure it out.
Hey, I mean, when I go to the hospital or I go to like, like a walk-in clinic or, dentist appointment, I'm usually in the waiting room for a good like 45 minutes to a few hours. So 20 minutes, like, you guys got away easy on that one.
I told Chris 20 minutes was like the perfect amount of time, I think, to not make Matt lose his fucking mind. Because Matt did get up and just be like, fuck you, and like left the room.
I'm starting to see a pattern with Matt and like yelling.
Chris just making things incredibly.
Actually, Matt, I will say, Matt loved the paperwork quest. He thought it was really fun and funny, and he did not get mad at it.
Yeah.
The waiting room, however, he was not a fan.
I mean, it's one of those things, like, you know how there are those movies where like you watch the entire movie and then at the end you find out that none of that actually happened. You're watching it through like someone's lies or someone's perspective where it never happened that way. I think that's how I'd feel in this situation, where it's like just being there for 20 minutes thinking that there's something you have to do, and just like, no, you're
especially
waiting.
Like I threaded the idea of a puzzle where there was a bunch of books that all had like I think elements in their name. Oh no, they all had medals in the book titles, and then also there was statues of a bunch of different animals made of different materials, as well as like several different like vials of liquids that turned out to just be like colored water. And I just got so out of hand. Like at one point they had the idea to like burn all the books in order of like their periodic table of elements.
I'm imagining a scenario where like you're in this waiting room and like the attendant in this waiting room is just watching these adventures outside, and it's just a waiting room, and the books are just reading material, and the colored vials are just decorative, and she's watching these people like attempt to burn reading material.
We're just burning all the books and fucking throwing rings in the fireplace together. And we poured coffee in the fountain at one point. Like
She's looking at you like, I just made that coffee an hour ago. Why are you throwing it
out? We exhausted all of the possible things that we could think of to try to get out of there. And it was just a waiting room. And that was evil. One of my favorite moments ever playing D&D was just the party reaction of like 3 of us being like, ugh, and Matt being like, no, fuck you, and then leaving the room.
20 minutes is a long time. Like,
this was like a weekend-long D&D session.
Yeah, so exactly. In a regular session, 20 minutes is a long time. Yeah, in a regular session, 20 minutes is a long time. But when you're playing D&D, I think our Saturdays are usually like what, 14, 16 hours of D&D?
Yeah.
So like 20 minutes isn't a long time
Yeah,
in
that's
14
fair. Like
hours.
in the context of that, that's fair. But
Yeah.
I mean, if I love how your favorite moments are just moments of sheer frustration with players. Um, but like I'm a pretty. I mean, you guys know me. I tend to be pretty calm, I think. But if there's ever a situation I would flip a table, like one of those two probably would do it.
That's fair. That's fair. So what's one of your favorite moments, Scott?
Oh, my favorite moments. Okay, so I have two that I'm juggling, and I don't know which one I want to pull out today.
I
And you know,
mean,
if we have
there's
time, maybe
nothing
we do
saying you'll
both.
get to both. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let's start with one where I was DMing, since that's kind of. Oh no, yeah, I guess you picked the player moment.
I picked a player moment. Yeah. Change it up.
Yeah, let's go one where I was DMing. So I was DMing the one shot that turned into a three shot. You know, people say one shot. It's generally one or two sessions, but yeah, this one went a third just because I wrote too much and I was too ambitious. But yeah, basically the gist of this session uh, was that. Actually, you know what? Let's start this with Chris. Chris, can you describe Roach? So it involves Chris's character, Roach. So Chris, can you kind of describe Roach and how you built him? Because I think that's pretty pivotal to the story.
Okay, so it was a one shot, so just trying to think of something weird I could do. I'd always liked the idea of an Acronite. It seemed like a fun idea to have like a little duplicate you could swap places with, making you like giving you a lot of battlefield control and stuff like that. And so I was just going through and just like looking at stuff. I was like, okay, like Battle Knight and something else. It's a one shot, I'm gonna multi-class
Battle
and make
Knight,
something.
Echo Knight.
Yeah, sorry, Echo Knight. And it's a one shot, so I'm gonna do something silly. So I was like, oh, like, Monk has a lot of good potential with like some of their dodging opportunity attacks and like the mobility you get with it. And then I came across the Simic hybrid race, which is a really fun one where essentially they're lab experiments. And when you build one, you choose essentially your experimental features, and you can get like fly speed, climb speed, claws, fangs, wings, up with that. And for Roach, I gave him a climb speed and also acid vomit, where you can essentially lob an acidic projectile. And I had the idea that he was essentially just a giant cockroach who would just skitter around. He had mobile, so he was incredibly fast and used his staff to beat people, and he was a creep. Just this disgusting giant cockroach with a stick who would just loved everything dirty and would just, try to steal
Yeah.
people's excretions.
It was honestly unsettling.
Yeah, and I remember like the first encounter in that one shot was Abashirs, black and white Abashirs, and they have darkness and things like that, so they can cast darkness I think once a day, or they're just spellcasters with with darkness on their spell list. And I remember thinking, okay, this darkness, I don't know if it's going to be OP. I know some of you can probably dispel it. Like this was level 13, right? Um, I did not expect this little fucking cockroach to have blind sight and just walk in and start wailing on an Avashir while it's sitting in darkness.
Yeah,
Uh,
the key part, fighting style was blind fighting.
and that was the first little surprise, but that's not my favorite moment. So the gist of this one shot was they were investigating this area. There were a lot of these like black Abashirs, white Abashirs, and a lot of these very just demonic figures, etc. And the story was that this cult who was following this death god had made a pact with Tiamat, who's like big time dragon queen, I believe, like super evil, yada yada. So they made this pact to bring them both back to the forefront of ruling the world. So essentially, these cultists were kidnapping young red dragons and basically injecting them with ichor and things like that in order to turn them into young red shadow dragons. So if you look at the shadow dragon template, you can kind of apply that to any dragon, and it gives it some really cool dark abilities. So, anyways, at one point before getting to this boss dragon, that was their final task. One of their encounters was to actually fight the scientist, or like see the scientist doing these experiments and injecting these red dragons with ichor and things like that, and watching these red dragons transform, or young red dragons transform into like black scaled kind of failures. And at one point, when the group walks into that and they're watching the scientists do this, eventually combat starts, and one of the first things is that the scientist looks over and goes, "Roach, my boy, I haven't seen you in so long." And yeah, so that was just kind of a tie into Chris's character, and this was like the scientist who was, uh, who was making these simic hybrids.
Also,
And
I did not know this was coming, so I just had to roll with it.
yeah, this was like I know in Chris's backstory this might not have fit because I think you said like you were abandoned or you ran away, or I don't remember, but
It was
yeah, this
very
was
vague. It was a one shot.
this was a
Yeah.
surprise that this scientist was actually the scientist who made Roach, this mutant cockroach. And yeah, combat ensues, and I just remember at one point, they kill off some of the other creatures. They kill off this young red dragon, this young red corrupted black dragon / black dragon. And I remember one point, combat's like about to end, and the scientist gets put into a wall of force, and the party deals with the other characters, and then Roach's turn comes up. I believe someone cast darkness, so there's a wall of
Yep.
force and there's a darkness area around there, and the Simic scientist is super low on health, and then Roach's turn comes up. And Chris, can you describe that turn?
I'm trying to remember which way I did it. But I got inside the box somehow, either through transport as my Ecronite or using like the Way of the Shadow Monks teleportation.
It was a teleportation.
Yeah. So essentially, I got inside the box, and I just had my stick, and I remember like the road voice. It's like, "Oh, father, it has been so long. Are you finally proud of me?" As I proceed just to beat him to death brutally with my staff, using my blind fighting style, and I think like I essentially killed him with like that one turn.
You did kill
Yeah,
him.
you crit on one of
Yeah.
your attacks.
So
I crit for one
basically
of my attacks and just beat him to death with a stick in a dark box.
this cockroach skitters across the room, teleports some 30 to 60 feet into a box of darkness. That line comes out. Monk attacks. They get like 3,700 attacks or something if they spend half a key point, some shit like that. And yeah, this guy just got annihilated. And across the room and stuff. After that, like I told Chris and Roach, like, you see other cockroaches and other hybrids like yourself. Like you see some corrupted dragons that are dead. You see some I believe it was like spiders with like icicles in their veins. And then you see a bunch of other little roaches. And at that point, Chris says, "I gather all of the roaches and my father, and I prop us all up." And then he goes in the roach voice, like, "Can anybody draw a picture? I want to remember this." and that was my favorite DM moment. Like that whole scene of the teleport, just smashing the
Just
scientist to death,
bludgeoning him to death.
grabbing his family members and posing a la Simpsons style on a couch for this beautiful.
I
And when
mean,
I
you
think
gotta
about
take a
it,
photo at a family reunion.
oh
Yeah,
man.
you gotta remember. It's gotta be
And
locked in there.
if this podcast does get some traction and we do have some listeners, if we're talking fan art, this is something I want to see. Just
Number one
Roach.
fan art piece is Roach's family photo.
Yeah, at some point we'll share his player token on Insta because it is highly unsettling.
I am not. I'm not gonna lie. If somebody does artwork of that and it's decent, I will frame and hang that. Like I will
Yeah.
frame and hang
Oh,
that in
I
my
would
room.
too.
Oh,
Yeah.
100% they go up in my office. 100%.
But next time I have a girl over, it's like, why do you have a picture of a dead guy with 4 dead cockroaches and
then
one
you get
really
to tell
cute,
a really fun story.
really fun story? But no, I think that has got to be my favorite. There's tons, but and I think this DM moments is like one of many, but that's got to be my favorite DM moment.
Yeah, for sure. I think we've got time. Chris, do you have another one that you wanted to talk about?
Not off the top of my head right now, but I'm sure I would in a brief moment.
You have another one, Mike?
Oh, I have a list, and the one that I already talked about wasn't even on it. Uh, yeah. Let's talk about something. I mean, you guys were kind of involved, but not really. I think one of my favorite DM moments wasn't even like in a campaign or not even really a real one shot that I ran, but being a part of the Toronto D&D community was something that like I was kind of in like a weird place when I discovered Toronto D&D, and I've always kind of had social anxiety, and getting out and like talking in front of people and
Hey,
talking to new people really sucked.
hey, Mike.
Yeah.
We all hung out at a nerd bar and we played D&D in the dark weekends at a time for 5 hours. I
I
think
know.
we can all relate.
Yeah, I know. But I think one of the ones that really stands out to me, in like I've been playing D&D and been DMing since I was a child. Like I said, the first time my first experience with D&D was like getting sat in a corner with my uncle and being like, "You're a wizard. Shut up until I ask you what you're doing." Like when I was like very very little. So it's always been kind of in the periphery for me. I lost it for a bit in high school, played a little bit in university, but I think really the first newbie night that I ran at Meltdown really stands out to me. After finding Toronto D&D through the Black Shrike campaign and starting to get involved with Toronto D&D, DMing at a newbie night and running my first newbie night, which I ran a few of them before we got shut down for COVID, is a moment that really stands out a lot for me. And one particular thing about that was for people that obviously aren't from Toronto and don't know what it is, newbie night in Toronto for Toronto D&D was essentially we would sign up. We would have like 4 or 5 tables, usually 4 or 5 players per table, so about 20 new people, and it was designed as a night for people that had never played D&D before and that had like never had even an introduction to D&D. So we would spend the first little bit doing like a basic breakdown of rules and what D&D really is and how it works. And then the second half would be a bit of a one shot for new players essentially to experience what a session kind of looks like. Usually something really small, like a little bit of RP, 1 combat or maybe 2 combat encounters, and some travel and stuff like that, just so they could see all the like pillars of D&D. So my first newbie night at Meltdown, there was a dude that came in and that wasn't sure what he wanted to do, had heard of D&D, but really wasn't like up to speed on what that would entail, like what playing D&D looked like. And we gave them the quick rundown, and he picked a class, and he ended up at my table based on the class that he picked. Um, and he didn't like talk to anybody at all the whole night. Like he kind of came in, I gave him the quick rundown, he like nodded along, took a character sheet, and sat down. But once we were in game and in character, he like put on a character voice and interacted with the players at the table. And like even when he went to the bar to get a drink, it was very much like he just like pointed and nodded when he got his drink. But in game, in character, he like really kind of expressed himself and was able to interact with other players. I think that kind of gave me the first like indication that D&D was really a cool tool for social interaction and for like combating social anxiety. And watching that dude come in and sit down and like experience that in a game, and then actually talking to him afterwards as he opened up a little bit was really cool. So I think that was one of my favorite DM moments. Like not even a game specific thing, because I ran that same one shot a bunch of times for a bunch of newbie nights after that, but just having that one dude come in and watch how D&D was able to kind of open up his ability to interact with other people, that was like one of my favorite moments ever D&D.
That's really good to hear. Like, as someone who also like ran a lot of newbie nights, it was always like a very rewarding experience. And similar to
Mm-hmm.
you, like I had like 2 quests I would rotate as like my new player adventure. Literally never went the same way because I feel like new players have this like wide-eyed approach to everything. They'll find the strangest way to get anything done, and they'll just be
Oh,
like, "Can we do this?" And I'd
100%.
be like, I suppose, yeah, that would work. Neat.
Yeah, oh, 100%. Like I had groups that like either like just went full on murder hobo and destroyed everything I even described as maybe being alive. And then I had groups that like befriended the goblins that were destroying the world around them. the newbie nights were so rewarding because watching people come in with like no experience and watching how they started to understand the game and how they immersed themselves in the game and how they interpreted the story you were trying to tell was really, really cool. So yeah, newbie nights are like one of my favorite thing in the world.
Yeah, I didn't have a chance to really DM for Toronto D&D. I was involved in as a player for a little bit. I actually have never DM'd a Toronto D&D table. My DMing stuff was like offshoots of Black Strike and things like that, and
Yeah.
one shots for like friends and pre-existing groups. Um, and I think I prefer the player side of the table, but the DM side can be really rewarding and fun too, from the aspect of like challenging yourself. Like you talk about players coming in and um, players coming in and opening up. I think it's somebody like who also has anxiety and kind of sometimes struggles with that stuff. Being able to sit in front of 5 people and having that feeling of like, oh, are these people gonna judge me? Or like, I'm scared about them judging me. What if I don't do a good job? Like being able to sit there and actually confront that and like run a fun session and have people actually enjoy it and like have memories of it. Um, it can be really rewarding too.
Yeah.
So like if you're listening and you resonate with some of that, like, and you're thinking about getting into DMing and you're listening to this podcast, like it can be rewarding, really rewarding to kind of break out of your shell and put on a stupid goblin voice and you know put some silly like writing together. I think one thing with D&D, like when you talk about those moments of like bringing people together or like helping you open up too, it's not just the playing of D&D, it's the whole community around it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, as somebody that has like a lot of social anxiety and doesn't like public speaking, doesn't like talking in front of people, putting yourself in the situation where you're like controlling the narrative and starting the story and building this world for a few people can be super, super rewarding. It helps them get out of their shell and helps them like experience something new, but it also like really helps take you out of your comfort zone a little bit, and can be super, super rewarding when people at the end of the night like come up to you and be like, thanks man, that was awesome.
Yeah, for sure. And when it comes to community, like it's not just about sitting there and running a game or sitting there and being a new player. It's like all the other things that come with it. If you're interested in creative writing, if you're interested in role playing, if you're interested in character development and storylines, if you're interested in miniature painting, like I don't DM often, but I paint a ton of minis because it's super therapeutic to throw on Witcher soundtrack and sit there and paint for a day. So there's a lot of stuff in the community, a lot of like good YouTube channels, a lot of Twitter accounts. They can really kind of engage with and like get to know and kind of form these friendships, right?
Yeah, oh absolutely.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I have another moment. And I'm gonna try to recall this the best I can. And once again, Chris is involved here. Uh, Chris was DMing, and Chris was DMing, and once again there was a cult, common trope, and we're investigating this cult. And at some point we go in and we figure out that these cultists are, doing some bad stuff. And I remember Aegis using Gaius on one of the people we captured to be like, you're gonna go back, you're gonna report nothing out of the ordinary happened. You got into some squabble with some bandits, your partner died. Well, I guess that's out of the ordinary, but you're not gonna tell him about us. And this guy was sent back to give the cultists the A-OK, because we're like, well, if we kill this guy, they're gonna know he doesn't come back. If we release him, we have nothing to prove that he's gonna not just be like, oh, they killed somebody and they're coming. So that Gaius was like, in my opinion, pretty clutch at like keeping us undercover. Anyways, we end up going to fight this cult, and at some point we get into this dark room, and there are, I think, 15 plus cultists in this room, and these were not like 8 hit point cultists. These were like cultist leaders and pretty beefy, and they were spellcasters, and some of them are 60 feet away, and like there's counter spells being thrown out. And I think this battle was on the verge of losable. Like this was, I think this was a
Like
TPK fight.
possible TPK, yeah.
Yeah, this was definitely a TPK fight. and I believe it was Johnny. I don't remember exactly who, but there was a mass suggestion cast, and a lot of these cultists failed. And the suggestion was, if you stay here, you're probably gonna die. I suggest you walk away and don't come back. And there were cultists that failed and they walked out. And at the top of this place, there was one cultist on an organ, just playing like music. And at this point, we were playing on this was online, and Chris throws on some pretty like spooky music in the tabletop we're using. And as soon as the music comes on, we're like, oh shit, stuff's going down. So there's this one cultist at the top, and all this guy, he's on his turn, he's just playing piano. He's not casting anything, he's not doing anything. He's playing piano for the entire battle. And we're laughing at that, and we're fighting these cultists. And then at one point, he finishes his song, and this is the way I remember it. And I might be a little off here, but this is my memory of the situation. So he finishes his song and hits a final note. He stands up, and this organ grows pipes and grows this chassis and grows legs, and it kind of gets up and awakens. And this piano playing cultist jumps into the chassis and pilots this thing, and we were now fighting an organ golem. And just seeing the token of this piano golem, this organ golem. When I say organ, I don't mean like heart, liver. I literally mean like an organ.
Yeah, it was a giant fucking pipe organ. I remember this.
Oh man,
Yeah.
and just seeing that token, just being like, we're fighting a fucking animated organ. Like we're fighting a golem made out of of a pipe organ. And man, that guy was fucking tough. And that's like just that reveal, just this guy spending rounds and rounds playing this piano to have that reveal of this whole organ like animates and it's huge. And
He was giving people inspiration.
oh, was
He was
Oh,
he was an evil bard.
he was an evil bard playing that evil piano music, just some Phantom of the Opera going on.
Fun fact: that entire fight was conceived off of. There's a piece of music called Templum Maleficum that I found, of just like a fantasy music page, and the main theme of it was like so inspiring to me, of just like this like evil church style thing. I just imagined like the powerful organ track of it. I was like, what if they had to fight the organ itself?
Can you link?
Because that's all it's.
I think you should link this so that we can take a look at it, because I'm interested in hearing what inspired that organ golem. But yeah, that was one of my favorite moments. Just that whole guy playing piano and the reveal there. Yeah, that was a fun one for me.
I will send you guys a link for anyone else who wants to look it up. It is Templum Maleficus by Robert Russell Composer. It's an amazing track, and he also has a lot of really good tracks on his YouTube. I pull a lot of my background music from his work.
Nice.
Really good stuff. Very inspirational for like D&D if you want some good background music for just like your writing, your creation, stuff like that, or for like using in games and fights like I did. He's really talented artist.
Nice. So have you had time to think of a second moment yet, Chris?
Yeah. I had one, but then Scott talking about Gaius reminded me of another really fun fight. So in my high level campaign, I think at the point they were about maybe level 15 or 16. I've been inspired because I read, I want to say it's in Mordekainen's, where they talk about like detailed how enemies behave, where they have like giants and Yuan-ti and stuff like that. I might be wrong. It's in one of the monster source books, where essentially they go into like the societies, the structure, and really give you like an in-depth look of it. And I was really inspired by kobolds, because I'd always written them off as being just like, yeah, you know where this is going.
I know where this is going.
I kind of written them off as like, they're the low level something. It's like essentially when your game starts, you choose, you can do, kobolds, skeletons, goblins,
Yeah.
or
wolves.
Yeah,
what
wolves,
is your
like,
low level fodder essentially?
Yeah, essentially there's several of them that have their own societies and stuff with some like CR2 leaders and things.
Just go out and grind level 1 boars for XP.
Yeah, but some of them have like an actual society and stuff. between like goblins, Yanti, and stuff like that.
Just a tiny South Park MMORPG reference there. If you haven't watched the South Park World of Warcraft episode, it's old, but yeah, it's still great.
Yeah. So a big part of this is running the cult storyline where they're an Inquisition hunting down a cult, bringing back a Chaos God, and they had found out that there was an artificer kobold somewhere in these mountains that they went to track down. And using this idea of that kobolds are these, innately cowardly kind of things, and it introduced a few new things where there's the kobold artificer, the dragon shield, and a spellcaster for them. I made this dungeon where essentially it was a lair for kobolds, and I took these players down to very low health with nothing but like highest CR2 kobolds just playing with hit and run style tactics. And one of our favorite moments is at one point, someone cast either a suggestion or a gauge on someone where they caught a kobold guard, they quietly killed like the front entrance guards, and they're like, you have to like what it's in your best interest, if we don't kill you, you have to take us to the leader in the main throne room. And the guy's like, failed it, took effect. He's like, all right, I'm gonna do that. And he walks through the dungeon. Is like, make way, adventures coming through, murderers coming. They killed the guards outside, and I'm taking them to the center of the. And he took the most meandering route possible because it didn't say take us straight there. He lured them into like every trap, ambush point, and stuff like that. Until eventually the group realized we should probably just kill this guy because he's just screaming, murderers coming through, headed to see our leader.
I will point out my character is far too smart for that and joined the session after this happened.
Yeah, I thought you were going a different direction with that. Actually, I remember that story, but I remember once, and this was Black Shrike, and this is when I was playing Lilith. And Lilith's backstory was that she was kind of she was an evil sorceress, and at one point during kind of one of her evil tirades or evil trances, evil spells, whatever, at one point, she raids this village and kills her first child, or she thought she killed her first child. And as this child is like bleeding out, some deity decides to take pity on her. And I let Chris decide. I'm like, maybe this is a trickster god who just wants to like annoy her, or, like toy with her, or maybe this is a god of like redemption. But Lilith doesn't know that. She doesn't know who kind of gives her this power. So as she's holding this dying child, you know, she casts a cure wounds. Like it just kind of comes out of her, and the child's wounds heal up, and child recovers, and she runs away, not knowing what the hell happened. So she was very much this very good versus evil, which I think is a common character trope. It's really fun to play with, and I described her as having blue eyes when she was Lily, and she was kind, and then red and white eyes when she was Lilith. And that's kind of how the party would at least know what kind of mode she was in. So I remember we go into these sewers, and once again to these kobolds, and these kobolds are like kobold inventors, and they have like little scorpions on sticks and little like bottles of mites that just like tunnel into you, and just things like that. And we're like level 10 plus at the time, and these kobolds are super low level, and there was a ton of them. And when we go down there, like Lily decides to grab tuna or like fish from the market. Like ask Chris, like, is there a fish market around? Because we just got off the harbor, and we decide to grab some like fish from the market. So we go down, and there's all these kobolds, and they're just like poking us for D4 and D4 and D4 and D4. I'm pretty sure all their damage was D4 dice and then D4 poison.
Oh yeah.
And it was just this annoying. Like we actually killed a few. And we got to the point where like Lily tried to bargain, like, oh, I brought you tuna, and just let us go through, and we need to talk to your leader, and whatever. And they would not take it. And at one point, we just decided, like, we're in combat for so many rounds, and they're dealing D4 to us, and they're just kind of running and skittering. And at one point, we as a group just look at each other out of character and go, like, should we just stop fighting? Like, they're clearly outmatched. They don't do they do D4 damage to us. We could walk by them and let them poke us. Like nothing's gonna happen. And at one point we decided to just leave the sewers. And Lily at that point kind of something switched in her, and she looked back and like, "Oh, you should have just taken the tuna," and casts a fireball and kills like some remaining 4 or 5. But I think that moment for me was fun because of these, like, the realization, like, where it's like, oh, you guys are just super fucking weak, and you're just trying to protect your little area, and we're not even gonna bother killing you. Like, we don't really care. We're just gonna leave. And I thought that was like I to this day I don't really know that I've been in a combat where it hasn't been like yes, there's been some where it's been like capture one person, surrender, like interrogate. But to just be like, oh, seriously, guys, like, fuck this, let's just leave. I've
See,
never really. That's what happened. I've never had
now,
that happen
I
before.
will say is that I gave you that guys for a reason, because the other party had that same, not the exact same situation, but a similar thing. So, like, the cult campaign is very much based on the idea of revenge and the consequences, where essentially a lot of the cult is people or things they've interacted with before ganging up against them. And it's the consequences of past actions in their like first campaign and stuff coming back to haunt them. Like, like there was an Oathbreaker paladin who they killed but left his corpse with a high level necromancer, and he came back as a Death Knight with even angrier.
I think we did that too.
Yeah, you guys also did that, so
Well, we haven't seen him again yet, but
No.
Spoilers.
No, I mean, I think we all knew he, like, when we left him dead there,
Yeah,
and
you
we all
guys
came out of
realize
the
his body was
tower,
missing.
and his body is missing. We're like, oh shit, this is not good.
not great. Yeah.
But anyways, the Kobold encounter my players has, they're traveling through the mountains to a different route, and essentially they were mounted on horseback through like dwarven tunnels, and they ended up finding the entrance to Kobold Warren, and they ran through and just started attacking kobolds because they're like, oh, these things are evil. And essentially the kobolds on their turn, all they would do was run away or attempt to carry young kobolds with them, or sometimes they just freeze in place and cry. And the players, like, after like a few turns, it's like, should we still be doing this? Like,
Yeah, that's very much the "Are we the baddies?" moment.
And I remember Matt had the. This also goes into favorite deal moment because Matt says like, the important thing is we don't stop now because I don't want to find out this is wrong.
Oh man.
Because he made a good point.
We're this far gone at this point.
If you leave some of them alive, there's witnesses, and you know that you did a bad thing. If you kill all of them, they were definitely just evil kobolds, and you did a good thing.
Yeah, history's
there
written
was
by
a
the
survivor
victors
who was like
and the
hidden in a
survivors, I
cupboard,
guess.
who came back to like side with this cult and be his main antagonist, which led to a black dragon taking pity on him and like becoming like the patron of their group.
Yeah, no, that sounds like a fun time. I think like some of those, like, throwing those at your players, like those morally ambiguous, like.
Oh yeah, it was just like a bunch of like level 14 characters on horseback, one-shotting kobolds who were just running and screaming every turn, and occasionally collapsing to the ground to sob. And they're like, let's get this over with, because definitely don't want to have to talk to any of them afterwards.
Yeah. Like the
As
one.
they kill and they'd be like, Gary!
This is depressing. Let's just kill them all and get out of here, huh?
The one thing I dislike about some of the monster stat blocks and stuff is like the alignment listed on it. And I hate when in game somebody goes, well, kobolds are evil. And it's like, I like throwing stuff at players who are like, okay, well, maybe like a lot of kobolds are evil, but this person that's in front of you is bargaining for their life and has actually cooperated. So
Yeah, my thing is always
Yeah.
like, well, kobolds are evil because humans wrote the stat blocks, right?
yeah. And I mean, what we're doing right now, like in the campaign, the Curse of Strahd campaign on Wednesday, we have killed a bunch of these druidic cursed werewolves who are like a level above lycanthropy. It's this like druidic curse. And we captured one and put him in a wall of force and negotiate with him, and it was left as Ixie tried to kill him, and he was in the wall of force, and I totally forgot he was in a wall of force, so my Eldritch Blast 3 beams right off the wall of force. But after that, in communing with our gods, the gods are like, it's a positive thing if you let him go. And we told this guy, go back to your group, and we understand that you were in a small domain and you're trying to get some more land, but you're not going to slaughter people anymore, and you're going to source your meat from like game in the area. And if you can behave yourself, maybe we can even offer you a bit of land to like, you know. And that was kind of the treaty, and we're going to be letting this guy go. And there is a player, and Ixie is lawful good. And Ixie feels like even though this creature is evil, like if they are able to if they're able to live peacefully, at that point they're not evil anymore, or it's kind of this like forgiveness thing, right? And there's another player in the group that's just like, oh, this is a perfect ambush time. Like we're gonna go in there and slaughter them all. And like that moral ambiguity of like, yeah, this person stole bread to feed their family. Now, granted, these wolves slaughtered a shit ton of people
Like a
to.
lot of people.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was a lot, I guess.
yeah, it was a lot. I still feel it's like a morally. Ixie, I don't know, would win twice if people decide to kill her, but I'm just really like Ixie's really confused that like I wanted to blast the shit out of this guy and you guys held me back. But now there's talk about smiting the fuck out of this guy. But yeah, that's a fun moment. Those moral ambiguity, like those morally ambiguous, just kind of like parties divided on whether this thing is evil.
Oh, absolutely. My sessions at Newbie Nights always led back to like imperialism and colonization and like making people think about the choices they were making.
Oh, I would love to loop back in just one quick little moment about,
Yeah,
as you
shoot.
said, Scott, the nature of like alignment of creatures. Where at one point in a mountain pass, my characters encountered a troll who was at a bridge. And they're like, "Oh, here we go, classic," and they're like, "Oh, we're gonna kill this troll." And he was like very polite. It's like, "Oh, hello, like, my name is Trolliver. I'm a civil engineer, and I just finished building this bridge. So I'm actually just charging a toll to cross it, to cover the fees and stuff. There's not a lot of infrastructure out here." And it was a very reasonable toll, something like 5 gold a person. They had hundreds. And most of our crossed it, but one of the players was like, but yeah, but trolls are evil. And he's like, oh man, this is great. Like, this is really going to go towards like funding further projects in the mountains. Like, thank you so much. And one of the players who's like the rogue, he's like, oh, I'm gonna sneak back and like steal all the money he has. After, like, he's like, yeah, I sneak away from the party because everyone else is like, we're not killing this troll. He's so polite. He said he has a family, and I was like, after the party like moved on, this guy's like, yeah, I sneak away. I'm going to find this troll and steal like all the money he's collected, maybe kill him. It he found him by the bridge with his little troll son with sticks, showing him how to build cantilevers to build a bridge with the Miami side. I was like, yeah, like you see Trolliver with like his little son, and there's like a few rocks, and he's like showing him different bridge structures like between them, and how like just a straight bridge just like falls apart, so you have to put in like trusses or like use suspension cables. I was like, I leave.
That's pretty funny. That actually reminds me of if you ever played Divinity Original Sin 2, I'm not gonna spoil it
I've
because I
never
think
played it.
Yeah.
yeah, you have. We play together. So there's a really fun quest in there that's 2 trolls at 2 different bridges. And if you play the game, you know what quest I'm talking about. But it's just a really funny. If you haven't played that game, it's very D&D like, very RPG. It's kind of turn-based, and you control a party of 1 to 4. If you haven't picked it up, super fun like multiplayer. I think we did like our group of friends did like once a week on Tuesdays at 7:30. Let's play, and it was a super fun experience, and it's got that D&D feel, um that turn-based combat feel, and just fun quests and fun stories. And yeah, that troll story just kind of reminded me of that. So, and it's on sale on Steam like all the time, but yeah, super good game, very D&D adjacent.
So, well, my drink is empty, so I think that's probably a good time to wrap up our first Dungeon Master moments. What do you guys think?
Sounds good. Also, shout out to Larian Studios if you want to sponsor us too.
All right. Well, I'm Mike, and if you ever need to slide into a DM's DMs, feel free to DM us on Insta, Twitter, or Facebook, or catch us via email at dmsdiscuss@gmail.com.
And I'm Chris, and awaken a shrub to keep watch over your podcast feed to subscribe to us for new episodes.
And I'm Scott. I kind of forgot my line, but it has something to do with you taking a long rest, and we'll see you after that.